Hi, welcome to 52 Weeks of Hope podcast live stream where you get to learn how to break free of procrastination or perfectionism. And I've just learned you don't get to break free from perfectionism, you get to recover from perfectionism. Is that right? Yeah.
Sort of, yeah. Hi.
And we have the fabulous Deborah Hurwitz from episode 52, actually. That's easy to remember, telling you exactly how to do that right now. Deborah, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, I love that it's episode 52 on the
Isn't
52
it?
weeks of host. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, I'll work backwards. So we can break free of procrastination and all sorts of other outcomes, results, behaviors that we don't like for sure. Breaking free of perfectionism suggests that we're going to somehow not be perfectionists anymore. And the fact of the matter is that that's like saying that as a human being, I will somehow never feel fear again, or never have a part of me that's worried that something is wrong. And that doesn't happen. We don't lose those pieces of ourselves. Those pieces of ourselves are doing really important work. We just get into right relationship with those pieces so they're not inappropriately in the driver's seat when we're trying to make evolved decisions that bring the change that we want in our lives. So that's the only distinction there, but I hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely. So I thought there were three really incredible, most fascinating things that you talk about on the episode. And one was how procrastination and perfectionism are really the flip side of each other. And a lot of people won't attempt something unless they can do it perfectly. So they just never even try because they can't do it perfectly. And I said, well, never being much of a perfectionist, I never thought about it, but I've talked about that with so many people. Do
Oh,
you want,
yeah.
I just thought that was great. You want to talk about that? Just
Sure, absolutely. So, yeah, it's funny when you said flip side, I was like, flip side. But what you're talking about is the appearance is that we have these really high standards. We care about it being great. We care about doing everything perfectly and just right. And, having this important, impressive thing going on or achieving a particular metric or result. And the flip side of that is that because we have this desire to have high standards, what ends up happening is we actually underperform, meaning we don't start the thing, we don't finish the thing, whatever it is. That's what it's sort of like this kind of inverse result or inverse proportion. The more we want and care about those high standards, the less we actually do.
yeah. So I just thought that was just
Yeah.
so
You asked me to,
interesting.
thank you. You asked me to introduce myself, and let me
Yeah.
do that not for the sake of, hey, here's all the great stuff about me, but I do want people to have an understanding of why I'm talking to you about this stuff, why it matters, and where I'm coming from. That I actually have, I've walked through these fires. I never ask anyone to do something I haven't done myself, and some of these places can be really uncomfortable to go, like being really present to a feeling of, I feel like I might not be good enough, or I feel like it doesn't matter if I try, I'm not ever going to get it done, or I'm not, imposter syndrome and things that come up around things like procrastination and whatnot. So I'll just share that I have a 30 plus year career in show business. I first started playing piano professionally at age 12 and started teaching in vocal conservatories at 14. I was very much a child prodigy, TV appearances and concert circuits and things like that as a teenager. And then coming out of college, I went straight to New York, got into the Jingle Studios, started playing Broadway shows and writing music for commercials, and began what ended up being like a 25 plus year career of Broadway tours, worked with Cyndi Lauper, worked with Cirque du Soleil. Just this past summer, filmed the movie version of Jersey Boys. They're doing with the hit show Jersey Boys what they did with Hamilton, and will now be a ubiquitous movie that I helped to make and that I'm also in. However, about almost 10 years ago now, I hit a wall when a show that I was doing that was supposed to be this big next stage of my career crashed and burned and left me open, bereft, and staring into the abyss of my existence and feeling like, oh my God, I'm starting over. It's like I'm 24 again. Maybe I got some better contacts. Maybe I got some better skills, but it's like I've not made any progress in 20 years. What the hell? And I went through a process that ultimately became about a 6 or 7 year reinvention process to identify what it was that wasn't working in my life, really, like what wasn't working about my own existence. Even though I knew how to make it look good out there, I knew how to pack up my resume with stuff that was impressive. I, by all measures, had a successful and glamorous life as a working composer and music director and piano player. But I felt all the time like my inner critic was just overrunning every conversation in my head. And I didn't know how to feel good or safe or relaxed in my own body. Like even when I went on things like trips or had days off or things that should be relaxing or should be fun, I was still loaded down with regret and recrimination, anxiety, and worry. And I needed to take those things apart. I needed to have an experience of peace of mind and success in my own life. And I got mentorship and coaching. And fast forward a couple more years, I found out that I have an incredible calling and a knack for being a productivity coach for perfectionists, helping people to give themselves permission to actually see what's there, to take apart the stories and narratives that we're torturing ourselves with that aren't really necessarily how it is for anybody else or out there in the world, to pay attention to what we actually care about and what enlivens us, as opposed to what we think we should be doing or what we think people expect us to do or what we hope we should do because people will like us if we do it, right? Like taking apart all of those structures and instead actually getting congruent and aligned with what our soul wants and desires. And no matter how freaking scary it is to identify that stuff and put our attention on it and complete and put work out there in the world related to it, that's the only thing that's actually going to give us a measure of satisfaction and peace of mind. And so that's what I'm out there making happen in the world now.
So you went from total overachiever to somebody who's at peace and balanced with herself. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not overachieving.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And yeah, and thank you for saying it like that. Like there is a before after, there is a life was like that then and now it's like this. But I also want to really be clear, because as a perfectionist, this was something that landed poorly with me all the time. And I think we talked about this a little bit on the podcast, but no human being is this pure, here I was a mess and now everything's amazing and I never procrastinate and I never have a moment's hesitation. And no, it's total bullshit. Like I'm a human being and I have a range of feelings. I just have equipped myself with the tools and resources and beliefs and guidance and coaching and action plans and things like that and accountability to take steps towards what I want and away from what drains and depletes me, and to be able to identify those things, give myself permission for those things. And so I kind of get out of some of those, bad moods or tough days or whatever a lot faster, right? I just have like faster
definitely.
recovery time. I take action more quickly. They say the number one mark of success for entrepreneurs and CEOs is you make a decision quickly. You don't necessarily have a higher percentage of making the right decisions. You don't necessarily have an experience of what you do works or you're just always great at stuff, but you make fast decisions. You take the data that comes, you work with that, and you move forward. And that's what I help people doing, even when they're not a CEO, when nobody's looking, right? They're just somebody who maybe has a creative project on the shelf, or maybe wants to look into a career change or look into moving from an employee situation to an entrepreneur situation. So many different walks of life. I work with so many different demographics out there, but it's really all about like, what really matters to you? What's the work that counts, not the busy work that you're spinning on all day long? Let's do some of that.
Yeah, there's gradations that we go through in life. So we get better faster, I think, the older we get, if we've done this work. I
And
think
keep
that's
doing
kind of
it.
how it works.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. We're all on different paths, but we get to help each other at different gradations, I think.
Yeah, I would love. It's funny that you say gradations, because I actually have something called the grade gap that I'm in the middle of trademarking. I love trademarking my fun phrases, and that's what I work with, is what I call the grade gap, which is like the gap between what you admire and recognize and have a taste level to appreciate. Like that's where your soul wants you to go. And yet when you first start out at something that you admire, you like have enough skill to recognize that you suck.
Yeah.
Right. And so as perfectionists, we're like, I suck. I should like not do that. I should get better before I put anything out there. And so much of getting better at stuff actually involves taking those scary steps to be visible, to ship your work, to actually, give something a try and not be endlessly tinkering with the first draft of something.
Oh, it's so true. When I opened my law practice, even, which is now a couple decades ago, my friend said, "Oh, you should open your own practice." I said, "I won't know what I'm doing." She said, "Nobody does." And, here I
Yeah.
am.
You know,
If
for a
I
long time I said, I don't know. I don't have imposter syndrome. I don't know what imposter syndrome is. I don't have a problem with imposter syndrome. And the reason I felt that was that I didn't do dilly squat in front of people until I absolutely had mastery or a really good chance of getting something perfect or close to perfect before I let anyone see anything. So of course I didn't feel like I had imposter syndrome. I just didn't show up to do anything except what I knew I could show up being excellent or near perfect at. So it wasn't until I actually started to take more risks and be more visible, not just to kind of test my own performance, but to make the difference I was here to make. I mean, the thing is that Tony Robbins talks about the difference between the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. You can navigate the science of achievement. You can figure out what to do to like lose weight, make money, get certain metrics, likes on social media, whatever it is. You can work that stuff out in a formulaic kind of way. Identify the goal, identify the steps to achieve the goal, take the steps to achieve the goal, achieve the goal. None of that has anything to do with an experience of satisfaction or fulfillment. What that comes from is contribution. What that comes from is what's the impact you're having out there on the world, on the environment, on people, on animals, on art, whatever it is that you care about, right? And when you actually have that experience of making that difference out there, that's what brings like for a perfectionist, that's what brings the relief, the validation. Not I got an A, but so what that I got an A? Like what difference did that make for someone else? And you can't have that until you start showing up for and with people. So that's the double bind we place ourselves in. We deprive ourselves of the experience of satisfaction and fulfillment because we're not ready, we're not good enough, we have to get it right, we have to be better. Not true. And that's
so
what you were talking
funny.
about at the beginning
Yeah.
of this, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's so funny because I totally identified with imposter syndrome the first time I heard it, and I'm not a perfectionist, and yet I find that all like intellectually interesting. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
sure parts of me are a perfectionist, but I didn't have the same experience as you being a teenage. I mean, I just didn't have the same experiences growing up and in my early 20s and all of that.
Yeah.
In fact, it was the polar opposite.
What do you mean
So
polar opposite?
Oh my gosh, I was not the student. I didn't go straight to college even, and here you were at Princeton. So I mean, I went to a good public school
Mhm.
eventually once I straightened up and turned my act around and got out of the gutter and went, "Ooh, better straighten up here," and straightened
Yeah,
up, and then I went to UCLA, which is a good school. It's not like,
yeah.
but again, I was in my mid-20s by the time I even started.
Oh, yeah. No,
So
I was
I
a performer from single
Yeah,
digit
so
years.
the whole so I've always been like, "Oh my gosh, that I can do anything is always." I'm always grateful that I'm doing anything, but that I can do anything is always like, "Check me out." My expectations are much lower of myself, I guess. So, so it's just so interesting. We are kind of the polar opposites, but it doesn't change the feelings because we
No,
still feel great helping others,
that's
being
right.
of service.
That's right.
And, that which also is a good segue to something else you said that I loved is when you talk about what are you no longer willing to tolerate?
Tolerations, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so, there's a saying that this has come across many quotes in many ways, but you don't get the life you want, you get the life you're willing to tolerate. And that's a really tough one to face, especially as perfectionists, because again, we've got those high standards. We've got that way that we need it to look, right? Look to ourselves, look to other people. So it's a terrible thought to imagine I don't have this amazing life. I have the life I'm willing to tolerate. Ugh, like there's so much ick there, right? But if we can just be willing to acknowledge, okay, there might be some stuff we're a little bit hiding from, or some stuff we want to cover up, or we don't quite want to get cozy with that feeling. That feeling might look like shame or regret or guilt. And that can be really uncomfortable, really hard. Like, let's go away. Let's just go, eat something or drink something, or, to get away from this feeling. But if we can just get cozy for a second with what is actually in my life that I'm allowing, even though I might be saying the words of, I don't want this, I don't like this isn't acceptable. Where do we have a narrative that says, I don't like this is not okay, I'm going to complain about this all day long, and yet it persists in our lives? So there are one of two options there. Either you're actually powerless to change that circumstance, which is not something I subscribe to, because I, as a coach, don't walk people through their lives disempowered, right? And unable to change what they want to change. I walk people through their lives changing what they want to change. And so I'm going to complain about this, but be unable to do anything about it is not an option, right? I don't subscribe to that view of reality. That's like a victimized place, a disempowered place, not into that. So either you're unable to change the circumstance, which we're not going for as an option, or we're able to change the circumstance and yet somehow we're not. And as people are listening to this, they're thinking, well, but that person needs to do that. And this is how about the town where I live, or my bank account, or how it is at work. And right. And we're in this circumstance needs that other circumstance, or that relationship needs to, right. All these things need to happen in order for something to change. And meanwhile, we're going to complain and tolerate it. And I invite you to take a look. Again, it gets into those squirmy places. I know it does. It's so much more comfortable. And I'm in this myself personally in one of my more important relationships. Like, it's so much more comfortable to make that other person the bad guy. It's so much more comfortable to be right and angry. Right? It's like, it's so obvious this person is doing this thing wrong. It's so obvious that if they would just change, if that thing out there would be different, then I could live my best life and have it the way I want it. And it's so much more comfortable to live in that place where you can't do anything unless somebody else changes, or you can't feel good unless something out there changes. But really, how it actually is that if you want something to change, you're the first part of that, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. You create a shift around you, starting with the shift inside you. And one of the most powerful, profound, and necessary shifts is to acknowledge what you've been tolerating and get clear for yourself. I am unwilling to tolerate this one moment further. When that's true, I promise you the circumstance will change. I promise.
Yeah. And I love that you said, what are you no longer willing to tolerate? Because you're tolerating it.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was fabulous. Okay. Then the third thing that I did want you to talk about is that we don't multitask. We switch task. I thought that was great.
Oh, you picked some goodies. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so funny. Again, from the perspective of the perfectionist brain, and let me just say, there's no clinical diagnosis of perfectionism, right?
Oh,
this is just sort of
we all give our opinions on this stuff.
A particular flavor of brain and thinking and dominant characteristics that I own and operate myself, and therefore, having solved some problems for myself and continue to solve problems for myself, can help other people solve some of those problems. And one of those issues is the energy piece. So what this corresponds to is the energy piece. And I don't know about you, but like, we're coming up on, I'm doing a whole big Black Friday thing that I'm offering a lot of resources to people. And one of the things that I'm sharing about is how, like, I don't know about you, but I've been really tired lately. Like, there's just sort of this collective energy drain. There's been sort of 2020 was like the getting hit by COVID and being in, rigorous response to a crisis. And then 2021, we were supposed to be coming out of it, but here we are limping into December, and still we've got who the fuck knows what's happening, right? And it's so exhausting. It like depletes us. Like this sort of, what's supposed to be a short-term acute stress response becomes this long-term chronic pain and drain, and that leaves us tired. And so all this to say, when we talk about multitasking, and this is something when we've been at home, when we've been working from home, when we've been managing families and kids and all sorts of things under the same roof, sometimes in the same room, sometimes at the same desk, on the same device, right? We feel like we've got to multitask. We feel like that's the only way to do it, is I'm doing this, I'm also doing this, I'm also doing this. But the truth is, and the truth is that we can only consciously place our attention on one action at a time. We can only consciously place our attention on one task at a time. We can put ourselves into versions of autopilot where our programmed systems will take care of things like doing the dishes or vacuuming or flicking through stations or half listening to someone on a call or something like that, right? You can tell yourself, I'm going to listen to a podcast while I do the dishes. And if you're mostly on autopilot for the dishes, you can mostly pay attention to that podcast. But I guarantee that when you notice a grease spot on a thing and you need to scrub it or pay attention to something in the sink, you've lost the podcast. And you'll notice that you really can only place your conscious attention, and really test me out on this. I tell my clients, like, you don't believe anything I say, just try it on and check it out, right? So check it out. Can you actually put your conscious attention on two things at once? You really can't. What happens is we don't multitask, we switch task. We switch our attention from piece to piece, and we can switch back and forth quickly, but it depletes our energy. And sometimes when we have a distraction, like an unplanned switch, even if it's a 30-second thing or a 2-minute thing, it can take us 15 to 20 minutes to get our brains back online with whatever it is we were doing. So when you open yourself up to interruptions and distractions, even if the technical amount of time that the distraction or the interruption took is only a minute or so, you might have lost 30 minutes in terms of what it is that you were originally doing or setting out to do. So I invite people, when you think you're multitasking and you notice that either you're not feeling super satisfied, you're not getting as much done as you want to, or you're overly tired, or you need to caffeinate, as she sits there with a large coffee next to her, right? Notice, again, not perfect, work in progress all day long, right? You want to take a look at where are you switch tasking in an inefficient way that's ultimately draining your energy and your focus.
Yeah, I've paid attention ever since our episode to that. I'm like, oh, I'm doing two things. Am I paying attention, or am I driving on autopilot and doing something? Anyway, yeah, that really stood out to me. So
Right.
I think this was great. And anybody who wants more information about Deborah, she has so many coaching programs that she does individually or in groups and master classes. All of her information is on the website at 52weeksofhope.com. Easy enough.
Cobaltcoaching.com is a great
Yeah,
place to start.
yeah.
Just cobaltcoaching.com. There's a free video series there if you want to break through procrastination, overwhelm, too many ideas, squirrel problem.
Yeah.
Cobaltcoaching.com. Go get the video series. That's a great place to start.
Yeah, and that's all, like I said, it's all right there on the website. And so this was great. And
Thank
if you
you.
want more information, just let me know. Just send us DMs, either of us, and we will get back to you. We'll come back on and do it again. And
Please reach out. I
yeah.
love helping people. 'Tis the
She
season to
does.
give. I'm all about it. So yeah, hit me up.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you so much for doing this with us today.
Thank you, Lauren. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.